Hello everybody, Maven here, and Bungie made one of my favorite builds twice as good, maybe several times as good. So if you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you might remember that Cenotaph Coldheart build that I did when the Cenotaph Mask first came out, which was I think like almost 2 years ago. And I covered it again recently when Into the Light launched in my top 3 Legend Onslaught builds video. And I'm sure you've all tried Legend 50 Wave Onslaught before, it is no walk in the park by any means. And this Arc Cenotaph Coldheart build just so happens to be my top pick for Warlock in this video, because personally I find it to be one of the strongest Warlock builds for ad clear, damage output, and team support all in one. This build's kind of a jack of all trades. And with the release of the final shape, Bungie made what was already one of the best Warlock builds in my opinion even better. They buffed trace rifles by 20% against minors and majors, and the Coldheart already hit like a machine gun as it was, but now it's just ridiculous. And then most importantly, we got the Prismatic Subclass, so we no longer have to use this build on Arc. And there's so much that this subclass adds to this build. So let's go ahead and break it down. Hope you enjoy. So before we get to the subclass, let's first talk about the Coldheart. The Coldheart was the first ever weapon with target lock in Destiny 2, except it's better. And I improvise here by using a volume slider so I can try to explain what I mean. So the more you land bullets, the target lock meter fills up, eventually maxing out at 5 stacks. But if you miss a shot, it instantly resets all the way back down to 0. But the Coldheart, on the other hand, is more forgiving because you land shots, the target lock meter is filling up, right? But you miss a shot, it doesn't instantly reset back down to 0. Instead, that meter is going to gradually start going down, so you can land more shots and fill it back up a lot faster. So you don't get punished like you do with target lock. You can actually jump target to target and keep your damage buff. So not only is it just a more forgiving version of target lock, but it's also twice as strong. Target lock maxes out at 5 stacks at a 40% damage buff, but the Coldheart goes up faster and also gives an 80% damage buff. On top of the fact that trace rifles just received a 20% damage buff against minors and majors this season, safe to say that this thing is incredibly strong as a special weapon, honestly one of the most underused weapons in the game. So let's do some damage testing so I can show you how strong it is. So with the legendary trace rifle, the Incisor, we are hitting a trash mob for 1376 to the body. And with the weakest exotic trace rifle, the Navigator, we're hitting 1789 to the body. And with the strongest exotic trace rifle, the Ruinous Effigy, we're hitting 2508 to the body. And finally with the Coldheart, we start off with 1789 to the body like the Navigator, but we quickly ramp up to 3218 to the body, and it's really easy to keep it up there in basically every situation. So as you can see, compared to the rest of the traces, it's incredibly powerful. So now let's do a side-by-side comparison against Carl with the Coldheart versus the Commemoration machine gun. And it looks like the Commemoration comes out just 1 second ahead, but I did miss a ton of crits with the Coldheart, so it was more or less a draw if you theorize that we landed all crits. So hopefully this makes you realize just how ridiculously strong the Coldheart is as a special weapon. But not only does it do good damage, it also has the perk Longest Winter to feed you ionic traces while you land hits with it, which massively helps your ability spam. Between Longest Winter with Facet of Awakening also feeding you ionic traces for Coldheart triple kills, the ability spam on this build is absolutely insane. And we're also using the Lightning Surge aspect so we can spam those Electro Slide melees, which are amazing at colliding groups of adds, and that also feeds into Facet of Awakening to feed us more ionic traces. And while that's happening, we're also proccing Facet of Balance in the process, feeding us even more melee energy so we can spam more Electro Slides and repeat the loop. And the biggest W of all that the Prismatic Subclass gives the Cenotaph Coldheart build is Devour from the Feed the Void aspect, giving us massive survivability, which is something that we didn't really get from Arc. And that allows this build to run around slaying out harder than ever before. Speaking of which, Devour also grants us grenade energy on final blows. So between that and the stupid amount of ionic traces we can make, we can spam grenades every few seconds, which by the way are vortex nades, which cause weaken from Facet of Dominance, a keyword we also didn't have access to on Arc. And we're a few minutes into this video and I didn't even get to the Cenotaph Mask yet, so for those who are new to the game and have never seen this thing, it basically just periodically loads ammo back into your trace rifles as you use them, which combos perfectly with the Coldheart. Because the Coldheart's pseudo target lock perk is strong, but since you only have a 100 round magazine at 1000 RPM, you typically don't have a lot of time to use that insane 80% damage buff. But with the Cenotaph Mask constantly reloading your trace rifle for you, you can can take advantage of that Coldheart damage for a much longer duration than normal, which is what makes it so insane. So that's the main function of Cenotaph here, but what really turns this from just a strong standalone build into an extremely meta-worthy build is that the Cenotaph just prints heavy ammo for your allies when they assist you in killing yellow bar targets, which makes this build viable in any level of content all the way up to Grandmaster Nightfalls. I'm telling you, no fire team will complain about having a Cenotaph user on their team generating free heavy ammo for them. And I believe that this is the strongest that a Cenotaph build can get. And I understand the majority of Cenotaph players gravitate towards the Solar subclass and use Divinity, but also notice that those players have to run a machine gun for ad clear because Div just isn't strong enough. But we just demonstrated earlier that the Coldheart is just as strong as a machine gun, so you don't have to worry about damage output like other Cenotaph builds do, because this build absolutely slaps. But now some of you might be wondering, what if we run out of special ammo, then what will we do? Well, that's not going to happen because this build has infinite ammo, and that brings us to our mod setup. So for the millionth time, I've demonstrated this mod setup in probably about 40 videos before. Like, it's nothing new to those who regularly watch my channel. But for those who are new here, the infinite special setup is just a copy of Charged Up on your chest, stacks on your boots, and special ammo finisher on your class item. This 3 mod combination makes it extremely easy to be able to have infinite special ammo. All you have to do is make orbs of power, which we can easily do with arc siphon on our helmet and heavy handed on our gloves. So you pick up a couple orbs, you get 4 stacks of armor charge because of Charged Up and stacks on stacks. You consume 3 of that to do a special finisher, leaving you back down to 1 armor charge left. You only got to find 1 more orb, get back up to 3, and you can immediately do another special finisher. So this setup makes it really easy to spam special finishers. So between that and 1 copy of Arc Reserves on our chest, we basically never run out of Coldheart ammo. And the armor charge is so abundant just from the amount of Coldheart kills and Electro Slide kills we're getting for heavy-handed that we can also afford to run 2 copies of Arc Surge with a copy of Time Dilation on the class item, so we can make our Coldheart even stronger. And while we're here, might as well go over the rest of the mod setup. So we got Powerful Attraction on our class item just for the heck of it. Then we got Impact Induction and Momentum Transfer on our gloves for a little bit more ability spam, and then 2 copies of Special Ammo Finder on the helmet for a little bit more Coldheart efficiency. Now moving on to our loadout, we got the Wendigo with auto loading and explosive light in the heavy slot because it works with our Arc Reserves and our double Arc Surges. And in our kinetic slot, it doesn't matter what you use as long as it's a primary that's strand or stasis, so it helps out with your darkness transcendence meter. Rufus's Fury is fine, Glissando with reconstruction is fine, there's Better Devils if you need overload, there's Michael's Reverence if you need unstop. You don't gotta worry about anti-barrier because of the Radiant Orbs artifact mod that gives you Radiant, which gives you intrinsic anti-barrier. But if you do need to deal with both unstops and overloads at the same time, then you can just run a sidearm and then swap your grenade over to Storm Grenades, since Facet of Dominance allows them to jolt, which stuns overloads. And for the other 2 fragments I didn't mention yet, we got Facet of Protection for a little more survivability, and then Facet of Purpose to give us overshields when we pick up orbs, because I'm on Nova Bomb. But it can give you restoration if you choose to use Song of Flame. It's your choice. And for the stat distribution, I recommend going triple hundreds in resilience, discipline, and strength if you possibly can, while maintaining a minimum of tier 3 intellect. Obviously prioritize resilience the most since it is PvE after all. And there are a bunch of artifact mods to go over, but there's too much to explain that would unnecessarily prolong the video, so just remember to equip every artifact mod that has the word prismatic in its description. Honestly, the artifact is really juicing up prismatic builds this season. And that about does it for the build. For the gameplay loop, all there is to note is just to perform special finishers every chance you get, and you'll be fine. And I typically go for Electro Slide melees whenever there's more than 1 ad in front of me, and I guess that's about it. It's really just a point and click type of build, nothing too fancy, very user friendly. Coldheart kind of carries it pretty much. If you're a Warlock main, trust me, you gotta give this build a try. You gotta experience the power of Coldheart. It's just an infinite ammo machine gun. Whenever I put the build down, everything else just feels weak in comparison. It's like that sensation when you play on Gear Falcon Hunter with Buried Bloodline and suddenly everything else just feels inferior. It's like that. Now we all know that the Getaway Artist build is the strongest Warlock build right now for endgame content, and the Cenotaph build may not have the same level of area control, but it makes up for it in damage output and team support. So I honestly feel that this build is up there with that one, more or less on the same power level. Seriously, just throw on this build and go do an activity and shred everything, and then do that activity again, but use a different build and use a primary weapon weapon, and you're gonna wish you were back on the Coldheart. After you see how hard it shreds, you're gonna be hooked. So as always, I will leave a dim loadout link to the build down below in the description and also the pinned comment if you'd like to give it a try. And if you got any buddies who are Warlock mains, I'd appreciate if you share the video with them. I'm sure they find it useful. And if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate if you drop a like and a comment, as it really pleases the algorithm and goes a long way. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you here on this journey to 100K. And with that, I will catch you in the next video. See you later.